when it came to the third shop, we chose Centertown, and which was not as obvious as Westboro or the Glebe, but we needed to understand whether we had broad appeal, and we needed to understand whether people that were selling drugs would also drink coffee. So we put keys on the washrooms, and it's been a success. I saw Rick Mercer last week, so I'm taking some liberties. Did somebody see you? In any case, I'm going to just put another point in here, which was when we decided to actually found the business, we also felt that we wanted to operate at a level that people might think that we weren't from Ottawa. It's a pretty contentious thing to say. But we definitely wanted to come across as being professional and not necessarily a mom and pop shop. And so we made some specific investments in developing our brand materials and going ahead with what is called a Cadillac cup. Snelling paper handles our cups for us, and he says we always get people asking whether they can have the cup like yours, and I tell them Cadillac don't do it. But we made certain investments such that we wanted the potential to be able to potentially grow outside Ottawa at some point, but we also definitely wanted to be taken seriously when we were going up against the likes of Starbucks and Tim Hortons or what have you. And so that was important early on. But a key part was that we didn't think that people would come to us because our coffee was a good cause. We recognized that people would come to us because our locations were convenient, because the prices gave good value for money, and that the product was good, and that the service was warm and engaged. And we felt that if we couldn't really deliver on those things, it didn't matter that the coffee was fair trade. So we wanted to, as much as our management team is extremely committed to fair trade organics and small-scale farmers, it was really important for us to recognize that the customers might not be quite as engaged, and that really what we needed to offer them was convenient locations, warm and engaged service, and great product. And a key part of that was also the food. We looked at the offerings of the nationals and said, their food isn't very good. And to that mind, right from the beginning, it was important for us to set up our own commissary kitchen and to make the foods in our shops all from scratch. And I often get accused, or I actually bring it up first, sort of preempting the criticism. That I call it a sub-optimization strategy. And one of those strategies is that we actually look to create jobs in our kitchen. We actually look for, well, how do we get that from scratch? How do we make that better? How do we do some hand forming such that we create high value added seeking jobs that way? And similarly, when it comes to building out coffee houses, we now look to put in more seats than we might otherwise. And I see Ed, well, this was my point from last year. But we look to put in more seats in recognition that, well, that we'll pay a little bit more rent and we'll have to replace assets a little bit more as we go. But we kind of recognize that we wanted to be a hub for the communities where we are, which also speaks to our growth strategy, which has been to place a bridgehead in each one of the old City of Ottawa neighborhoods. We hope to be your community hub, and we try to hear that. But that's another piece of the sub-optimization. Sorry, Mark. No, but it's all good. In any case, when it came time for stores after that, that strategy was to focus on the old City of Ottawa. And we've had some interesting challenges as we've gone through. Some of the challenges have been around financing. Getting our first loan was extremely challenging. For the budding entrepreneurs, banks really like it if you can put some of your own money in. They really like it. So it's an important part. But it was challenging, and I wish that OCLF had been around at the time, because we may have been a client at that time. In any case, getting the bank loans was tough. The first bank did not register the security correctly, so when it came time to do the second store, we got a bit of a surprise and were told to go elsewhere. And we're actually on our third banker now. Any bankers, I'd like to talk to you later. In any case, but it's been challenging, and in fact, it wasn't really until store 9 that we actually qualified from the traditional bank's point of view for a term lending program. And I would have thought we had a good track record by then, but it actually took a lot of track record in order to move away from slightly higher cost financing. In any case, what's next for us is more growth. Around 5 years ago, we sort of made the decision, at halfway through our 10-year history, we made the decision to double the size of our company. And that was a big challenge. And the reason that we decided to do that was to continue to kind of punch above our weight, but it was also in recognition that our founding objectives had been to be a demonstration business, and we felt that the size that we were at needed to be larger in order to meet some of those demonstration objectives. And I'm pleased to say we feel like we're getting there now, but we're now at the point where we're going to aim to grow again. And again, it's to continue to become a stronger demonstration business. And at this point, I just want to turn to what that means. And some of what that means is how do we do better by growers? How do we do better by our community of customers? How do we do better by employees? And we have a stakeholder model that we use, and we want to balance return to investors with the needs of those other stakeholders. And for us, we feel we need to get a bit bigger to feel like that right balance can get achieved at some point. And on that note, there's a quote that I adore, which is that life's achievements aren't about what you get, it's about who you become through your achievements. And that's kind of a bit of a modus operandi for Bridgehead at this point. I'm going to conclude there, but I want to, the one last thing that I wanted to indicate is that when it comes time for us to grow, I was, John Ibbotson from the Globe said, why is it that no Ottawa success stories really grow outside of Ottawa? And he said, I've been really thinking about that. Do you know why? And I thought, I never really thought about it, but I'm going to start thinking about it. And in terms of, in high tech, we've certainly seen, some growth outside Ottawa, but in terms of retail or other types of sectors, we haven't really seen it. And it may be something to do with the size of our market, in that it's really tough to be a success here and what the valuations of your company are going to be, and then to then transplant that into potentially bigger markets. But I think it's something interesting to get at. And there's also a need for mezzanine financing for companies to grow. And to me, that's a huge area that's still kind of underserviced on the financing side that will need some attention. OCLF, go crazy. So that'll be my conclusion. Thanks very much for coming out.